Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm doing my recommendations and TBR for my October 2020 monthly priority, which is Disability Employment Awareness Month in the United States. If you're not familiar with my monthly priorities, I will link a playlist about that below. But basically in October, I'm going to be focusing on disabled reads. So books that center disabled characters or that are written by disabled authors. Also, if you're interested, there is the Disability Readathon that is going on all throughout October. I will leave a link to that website below. That has a lot of resources in terms of lists of books that have disabled voices in them, as well as some different prompts that you could do. Lots of them aren't even related to reading. Some of them are reading Twitter threads or watching things, etc. These prompts didn't quite line up with what I wanted to read this month, so I didn't follow those, but I think that it's a really great resource for anybody who's interested. So in this video, I'm just going to give you some recommendations for a couple of my favorite disabled reads that I've done in the past year, as well as talk about all of the books that I want to get read this October. So let me start with my recommendations, beginning with An Unkindness of Ghosts by Rivers Solomon. This is a really, really wonderful science fiction novel that is just one of my favorites. And the author, Rivers Solomon, is non-binary, Black, and neurodiverse. So all of those parts of their identity are really represented in the main character in this novel, Aster. Aster is a doctor living on this generational starship. And this generational starship is not a great place. It is set up kind of like the antebellum South, where there is very much a racial divide, where the lighter skinned rich people live on the upper levels of the spaceship and the darker skinned, basically slaves, live on the lower levels. Aster, as a doctor, is somebody who can travel between the levels, and that gives them a lot of freedom. And that's really important because there ends up being a mystery regarding what happened to their mother and how their mother died that they have to uncover. I really loved the way that this centered Aster's experience as somebody who is neuroatypical, as somebody who doesn't always understand the interactions with other people, but is still brilliant. Like this wonderful doctor who is able to solve so much stuff, as well as a researcher, as well as someone who's uncovering a mystery. I really, really liked that centering of somebody who is neurodiverse, but also just such a cool character. So I really highly recommend this story. Next, I'd like to recommend Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is such a funny contemporary romance. I absolutely love this book so much. And it is by Talia Hibbert, who is a Black British author who deals with chronic pain, and the main character in this also has chronic pain. So the main character in this story, Chloe, is basically a coder, but she deals with chronic pain, and that's led to a lot of isolation for her because some of the people in her life haven't been willing to deal with the accommodations she kind of needs and the way that she gets tired and these sorts of things. And she ends up having a near-death experience, decides, oh, I need to actually live my life, makes a list of all the things that she needs to do to get a life. And on them, there's things like ride a motorcycle. It's very convenient because the superintendent of her apartment complex actually has a motorcycle, and maybe he's also really attractive, and they end up kind of falling in love. And it's just such a sweet story. I did an entire standalone review of this, so I will link it below. But if you like romances, you've got to pick this one up. It is so good, and I just really loved the way that Chloe Brown was very much somebody who was dealing with a lot of very intense chronic pain and was still the heroine of the story. She was somebody who was centered, and that didn't make her any less sexy in this or any less somebody who was taking charge of her life. And I really love this story. And lastly, I'd like to recommend Uncanny Magazine, issue 24, Disabled People Destroy Science Fiction. This is a special magazine issue that has a collection of multiple different science fiction short stories, as well as poetry, as well as a bunch of nonfiction essays and memoirs, really talking about all of these different disabled authors' experiences with science fiction. And I just loved that discussion of the intersection of genre and disability. And also this just had such a wide variety of different authors who had different types of disabilities and different backgrounds and different intersections. And the way that reading all of those stories, both the fiction and nonfiction, gave insight into that experience and gave insight also for me into what I should be looking for in disabled fiction. There were some excellent essays in this just really talking about what kind of representation people wanted to see in their fiction of disabled characters and why it's so important that that representation exists. I really loved this collection. I did a standalone review of this as well, so if you're interested, please check that out. I think that this is very, very much worth a read. Okay, now moving on to my TBR for October. I have 7 books on this TBR. My goal is to try to get to at least 5 of these, but really I'm such a mood reader, so I have no idea what I will end up picking up, and I might pick up quite a few things that are by disabled authors that aren't on this list as well, but these ones I would really like to try to prioritize throughout the month. So the first book on this list is Uncanny Magazine issue 30, Disabled People Destroy Fantasy. So this is another special issue by the same magazine as the one that I mentioned in my recommendations, but this is a bunch of collection of fantasy stories. So short stories that are fantasy as well as essays that are nonfiction by authors of fantasy who are disabled. So I loved the science fiction one so much. I'm really interested to read this fantasy collection too. Next, I want to read My Life as an Ice Cream Sandwich by Ibi Zoboi. This is about a little black girl in the 1980s who's been living in Alabama with her grandfather, who is a NASA engineer, and has like such an active imagination and is in fact neuroatypical, but she goes to spend the summer with her dad in Harlem and finds that she's not really fitting in. This is a middle grade, and I'm so into middle grades right now. I've heard a lot of good things about this book. I don't believe that it is Own Voices, but I've heard very good reviews of it, so I really want to try picking it up. Another middle grade that I'd like to read is The Mighty Heart of Sunny St. James by Ashley Herring Blake. This is a story about a little girl, Sunny, who has cardiomyopathy and has to get a heart transplant. And after that heart transplant, kind of like Chloe Brown, makes a list of the things that she wants to do to really truly live life, including things like kiss a boy, except that she finds maybe she wants to actually kiss a girl. So this is a really sweet sounding story that I've heard really good things about from Adri at perpetualpages, who I will link below. I don't believe that it is Own Voices for the cardiomyopathy, but it is Own Voices for the queer rep, so I'm really looking forward to this one. Next, I'd like to read The Silence Between Us by Alison Gervais. This is a YA contemporary about a teenage girl, Maya, who is deaf and ends up going to a hearing school for the first time, and there's a lot of difficulties in kind of interacting with people and overcoming that kind of communication barrier. I really think there's a lot of interesting things that happen with deaf culture, and this just sounds like such an interesting book, especially because it is Own Voices and that the author is hard of hearing. Next, I'd like to read Mating the Huntress by Talia Hibbert. This is a contemporary paranormal romance novella that is about a werewolf huntress and a werewolf. It just sounds like it's a really cute story. It's also Halloween themed, which seems so perfect for picking up in October. I had this recommended to me by Kazen at Always Doing, who I will link below. As I mentioned before, Talia Hibbert is somebody who deals with chronic pain, although I don't believe that any of the characters in this have disabilities. Next, I'd like to read A Woman of No Importance by Sonia Hall. This is a biography of Virginia Hall, a woman who was a spy during World War II and had a prosthetic leg. This is something that I've heard a lot of people say really good things about, and a friend got it for me as a Christmas gift, so I definitely want to pick it up. And lastly, I'd like to read The Sound of a Wild Snail Eating by Elizabeth Tova Bailey. This is a nonfiction memoir that I believe I heard about from Olive at abookolive, who I will link below, and it just sounds really good. It's about a woman who goes through an intense illness and has to stay in bed for a long period of time, and there is a little snail that she discovers is living on her bedside table, and she just kind of contemplates the snail's existence and her own existence. And it sounds like a really reflective book. And that just sounds like the sort of thing that I would enjoy reading. So I definitely want to pick this one up too. Okay, so those are my recommendations and TBR for October for Disability Awareness Month. If you guys have read any of these, if you have any thoughts, any comments, any recommendations for me, or if you are participating in reading disability reads in October as well, let me know what you're reading. I'd love to hear from you guys. Just leave me a comment down below.